All right, pre-AP biology. We're going to continue with our unit 4 notes today on cell reproduction. One of the things that we kind of got into yesterday a little bit was chromosome number. Okay, so make sure that we remember the terms diploid and haploid. I mentioned in that video yesterday certain types of cells in your body have the diploid number of chromosomes, and some cells in your body have the haploid number of chromosomes. We should know what types of cells those are, and we should also know what the number is. So for example, we said like your skin and your blood cells and your heart cells and your muscle cells, those all have the diploid number of chromosomes, which is 46 for humans. And we said your sperm and egg cells, depending if you're male or female, they have the haploid number, which is 23. All right, so this picture here is very simplistic. And it's usually one that I'll kind of draw on the board in class, but whatever. I like this picture I found on the internet. Um, it's simply showing us a very, again, a very simplified view of what sexual reproduction is. Yesterday we talked about asexual, right? Asexual reproduction, you only need one individual. And it just basically just splits in half, right, and forms two. But in sexual reproduction, there are two individuals that are required. I think we probably know that. We need a male and a female. So if you need two individuals, then you need two different cells, right? You need two different gametes, you need sperm cells, you need egg cells. And again, those contain the haploid number of chromosomes. So when those sperm and egg cells combine, to form what we call a zygote, which is the first cell that everybody came from, that zygote is a diploid cell, right? And then 9 months later, you'll eventually have a baby. Okay. So this is just the basics. I mean, there's a lot more that kind of goes into the development of a baby. But overall, I mean, this is kind of how it starts, right? You need these two haploid cells, sperm and egg. They form that zygote. And again, once that zygote forms, then the rest of the cells that make up the baby can follow. All right. So again, just kind of understand, the I guess the basics of sexual reproduction, and kind of compare that and maybe contrast that with asexual reproduction that we talked briefly about in the previous video. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit today about some potential problems that could happen in this process. We said that two haploid cells combine to form a diploid cell, but occasionally there's some mistakes that can occur. These are called chromosomal mutations. Mutations are basically mistakes in the genetic material, the DNA, which is found on chromosomes, right, that make up an individual. So just to kind of start off today, we'll get a lot more into genetic mutations after Christmas break, but I think these are kind of easy to understand considering the topic that we're on. They're called trisomy and monosomy. The term trisomy basically refers to having an extra chromosome. So if we're talking about humans, right, normally we have 46 chromosomes in all of our body cells, but a trisomy would result in an extra. So there would be 47. If it's a monosomy, it would result in missing a chromosome. So instead of 46, you'd have 45. Now, how does this happen? It's actually, I mean, it's actually a lot more complex than this, but I mean, I guess sort of the basic understanding of it is fairly simple. So let's say, for example, right here in this picture, these two cells right here, okay? Let's just say that one of them's a sperm and one of them's an egg. It doesn't matter which one is which. But normally, those cells would both be haploid, right? They would both have that N number of chromosomes. For humans, N is 23. But for whatever reason, this particular gamete, whether it's a sperm or an egg, because it can happen in both, this particular one has an extra. So that means that this cell would have 23. This cell would have 23 plus 1. So there's 24. Well, if these cells come together during fertilization, then you're going to end up with a zygote that has 2n, right? N plus n, there's your 46, plus the extra. So this would be an example of how a trisomy forms, okay? A monosomy is very similar. Again, we have our two cells, right? Sperm and egg, it doesn't matter which one is which. You've got your normal number of chromosomes in one of those cells, 23. The other one is missing one. So this cell would have 22 chromosomes. So if they combine together, you're going to get your N plus N. So there's your 2N, there's your 46, minus 1. So this zygote here would have 45 chromosomes. This zygote up here would have 47 chromosomes. Okay, so I think it's easy to understand how that could occur. And to be honest with you, um, anybody could have a baby with a trisomy or a monosomy. I mean, males, for example, males, you guys make millions of sperm cells a day, millions of them a day. Chances are at least one of them might be defective. You know, it might have an extra chromosome in it, it might be missing a chromosome. Now, if that particular sperm cell actually fertilizes a female's egg, then you could have a trisomy or a monosomy. And vice versa, females. Now, females, you've got hundreds of eggs, but you only release one a month. And we'll talk about that down the road. But if that one egg is defective in any way, if it has an extra or is missing a chromosome, and that egg perchance gets fertilized by a sperm cell, again, you can have a trisomy or a monosomy. So I want you to understand that two normal parents, genetically normal, can have offspring that have these particular conditions. Okay, now what does this result in? Okay, there's several different types of trisomies and monosomies, and we'll talk about a few of those in a minute. But I mean, think about it. If you've got an extra chromosome or are missing a chromosome, remember what chromosomes contain, right? They contain DNA, they contain genes, which are segments of DNA. And there are dozens, if not 100 or so genes on each chromosome. So if you have an extra one, you might think that would be good. It's not good, because you've got multiple traits that are being affected. All right, we typically call that a syndrome. If someone has a syndrome, there's not just one thing wrong. There's usually multiple things that are wrong, and that's all because multiple genes are affected on that particular chromosome. A lot of times, I'll be honest, it results in the death of the embryo. For example, once this zygote forms, it'll go through some cell divisions, and it eventually becomes an embryo at a certain stage. But if that ball of cells that eventually becomes an embryo, if it's not developing the way that it should, a lot of times the female body will just reject it. If you've ever heard of a miscarriage before, there's lots of reasons that miscarriages can happen, but this is one of those. Okay, so sometimes it results in the death, not always, but sometimes. If the baby does survive, the 9 months of pregnancy and eventually is born, There's usually some major birth defects. In fact, most of the time that there is. Again, and that all stems back to the fact that multiple traits are affected on those chromosomes. Okay, so let's take a look at a few things here when it comes to kind of diagnosing this particular type of condition. There is a medical technique that's performed on a lot of women, especially older women that are thinking about having children. And the reason why older women, I think, they do this more on is mainly because the older you are, the more of a chance you can have a baby with a birth defect. Older women, the risk or the chance of having children with mutations or birth defects is much higher than a younger woman. But there's also other things like family history and things like that that come into play as well. But this is called amniocentesis, and it's a method for obtaining fetal cells or cells from the baby. Without getting into too much detail, here's the fetus, here's the baby, and this is the kind of the placenta where the baby is sitting inside of, and inside of that placenta is a bunch of fluid. It's called amniotic fluid, and that fluid, the baby is kind of floating in it, but there's a bunch of cells in that fluid from the baby. So what they'll basically do is they'll inject a needle inside and they'll suck out some of that amniotic fluid. And inside of that syringe will be some of the baby cells. So what they can do is they can actually, this is kind of a process. It's a lot harder than what I'm making it out to be. But they can look and they can examine the baby's chromosomes. So let's say, for example, a woman goes to the doctor and maybe there's a reason for her to believe that maybe there might be something wrong with her baby. So they do amniocentesis and they pull out some of the baby's cells and they just spill out all the chromosomes, and we can look at them. And here they are, right? I mean, these are the baby's chromosomes, right? We have two number ones, that's good, two number twos, two number threes, and we can look. They're not all ordered like this. We have to kind of have ways to kind of look. We have ways to test for each chromosome, but this is just kind of a normal karyotype, right? There's two of every chromosome, even the last pair, right? This is the sex chromosomes. So by looking at this pair, right, we can kind of tell that this is kind of a normal karyotype, and it's a male, right? So there's 46 total chromosomes. There's an X and a Y, which would make it male. So when you look at a karyotype, you should be able to determine, one, is it normal or not? Does it have the right number of chromosomes? And two, what's the sex of that individual? In this case, it's a male. Here's another karyotype here. You guys can take a look at it. First question I have for you, is it normal? Yes or no? And I think by looking at it, you would probably say, yeah, there's 46 chromosomes here, right? There's 23 pairs. Now, the last pair, again, indicates the sex of the individual. So if you have an X and a Y, that would be a male. If it's two X's, then it would be a female. So this would be a normal human female karyotype. Let's take a look at another one. Okay, take a look at it. I just kind of go row by row. Okay, kind of look and see. Okay, is there the right number of chromosomes? There should be a pair. But you'll get to this one, right? You'll notice that there's an extra chromosome number 21. Okay, so right away that's telling us this isn't a normal karyotype. You will notice the sex pair, right? There's two X's. So this is a female, but it's a female with a trisomy condition. Now, this particular trisomy is probably one of the more common ones that we see. This is called trisomy 21. It's also known as Down syndrome. You've probably heard of Down syndrome. Maybe even you've seen kids that have Down syndrome. They have some typical, kind of traits about them. If you've seen a child with Down syndrome, you could probably recognize them, right? They have these characteristic traits, and if you want to, do a Google search for Down syndrome, you can kind of read through some of those things if you're interested in that. But I mean, we have kids in our school that have Down syndrome, and you might even have some relatives or maybe know some people that have Down syndrome. But again, the underlying cause of it is a trisomy. If you know someone with Down syndrome, I want you to ask yourself this: are their parents normal? I mean, their parents don't have Down syndrome, right? Again, the cause of it is one of those two gametes, either a sperm or egg, had an extra chromosome. In fact, it had an extra 21st, right? The sperm cell should have one 21st chromosome. The egg cell should have one, and you should get two, right, in the zygote. But in this case, there was an extra, so you have an extra 21st chromosome. Here's another karyotype. Take a look at this one. This is kind of an interesting one. Ask yourself, is this a normal karyotype, or is it not a normal karyotype? And again, if you look through it, row by row, everything seems to be normal until you get to the sex chromosomes. Everybody should have two sex chromosomes, just like everybody should have two number 21s and two number 9s and two number 12s. But this individual has one. All right, so this individual has an X and is missing the other sex chromosome. Okay, so this is a monosomy condition, right? They have 45 chromosomes. This is what we call Turner syndrome. Again, I'm not gonna say it's common, but it's a syndrome that we see from time to time. I want you guys today, if you're interested, go ahead and do a Google search of Turner syndrome, and you can look and see what some of the characteristics of these people are. I mean, it happens. It's missing a sex chromosome. Here's another one. This is a trisomy condition. So again, you'll notice, two of each, until we get to the last pair, which there seems to be three of. So this individual, has two X's and a Y. All right, this is known as Klinefelter syndrome. All right, it is a trisomy because there's an extra. And I'm going to guess right now there's a lot of thoughts going through your minds. Like, what's going on? Like, somebody has an extra sex chromosome. Are they male? Are they female? Are they both? I mean, you might actually have these questions. I probably would if I was 14 or 15 years old. But I will tell you this, and again, I want you to do a Google search and find this out on your own. But I will tell you this. People with Klinefelter, they are male, because this little Y chromosome right here, that's what makes males males, right? I mean, males have certain traits that females do not have, right? So this Y is what gives males their traits. So if you have it, you by definition are a male. However, these X chromosomes, okay, are what gives females their characteristics. A normal female would have two X's, but this particular individual has two. All right, so again, do a Google search, find out what's going on here with people with Klinefelter, and what maybe some of their conditions are. Okay, I'll leave that up to you guys. All right, guys, have a good day. That's it for me. So make sure, again, we understand trisomy versus monosomy and some of these particular conditions that can result. All right, have a good day.